be able to do. So for you are here now until we wait for a couple of more people to join. This webinar will be, as you know, about the German perspective of doing surrogacy and egg donation in the United States. So we will focus on that. And Thomas here, who will present himself later, will do the largest portion of this session, which is basically the German jurisdiction and parentage, which is what you want to hear about. So I'm going to be less talkative in this webinar to let Thomas, the expert in this field, do that. You can ask questions anonymously in this webinar as well. So you are here, so you know that. There is a button on your screen, depending on if you are on your iPad or iPhone, or Samsung also exists, I've heard. So any of those devices, try to find that button. It's called questions and answers, or Q&A. And you can ask questions as we go through this webinar if you want to. We will have a little bit of a Q&A session at the end if there are any questions, but you can kind of ask them as we go through this presentation if you want to, and just leave them in there for Thomas and me to answer. I think most of them then will be for Thomas probably in that sense. Great, so let's get started, and then if anybody joins more, they can just jump in. So let me open my presentation a little bit here, and we can have a look at this exciting topic that we have today. I hope that everybody can see this clearly. Thomas, does it look okay?
That's okay. Yeah.
It's approved by Thomas. Okay, so let's start and talk a little bit about our schedule for today. So we're going to talk a little bit shortly about Hatch and Pacific Fertility Center, so you know a little bit of who we are and what we do. It's going to be quite brief, and then we're going to shortly just talk about you, Thomas. You can introduce yourself briefly of who you are and what you do in this field. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the surrogacy law in the US, very, very broadly or generically, not very detailed. We're going to look at a little bit of a map of the US that has to do with surrogacy laws in different states, to talk about which are the surrogacy-friendly states, the more cautionary states, and which states do actually prohibit or heavily restrict surrogacy arrangements. And we will also talk about when you go to a certain state, what states suit different people, depending on if you're single, if you're a couple, straight, gay, etc. And then we will talk shortly about why California is such a popular state for surrogacy and IVF. There are many great states for surrogacy, which we will look at, but California does come up a lot with international intended parents, kind of assuming that California is the best state for surrogacy or wanting a surrogate in California. So we'll talk a little bit about why that is and look at that. And then we're going to go to Thomas, who's going to speak about the legal considerations for German intended parents for surrogacy in the United States from the German legal perspective. And then if we have any questions, we're going to answer those. And we're going to be done here in about 30 to 40 minutes in time for everybody to go to bed in a reasonable time. At least me, I just told Thomas I go to bed at 9, so I will be a little bit late to bed tonight. But for everybody else, Netflix or whatever you do after this, that's up to you. Great. The host for today is me and Thomas, obviously. My name is Edwin. I'm the international manager here at Hatch, which is our agency, and Pacific Fertility Center, which is our clinic. So we have both of those kind of under one roof here. More importantly is that I'm a two-time father through surrogacy and egg donation. I'm Swedish. I live in Europe, so I'm not American, and I don't live in the US. So I've done this as an international intended parent. So we'll speak later at the end on how you can connect with me if you have any questions on that process, any questions about my journey, or if you just want to learn more about Hatch as well. All right, Thomas, do you want to shortly introduce yourself now? Seems like a more appropriate time, actually. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why I consider you the expert here today in this field.
Thanks, Edwin. Yes, I'm, as you can see, a lawyer in Germany. I'm quite experienced in the field of migration law, so that's my original where I come from. And I'm acting in this field about now 27 years. So I'm indeed quite experienced, and since about 15 years, I'm acting in the field of surrogacy. What starts with a couple of Germans who hired a surrogate in India when this was legal there, and they faced a really, really bad situation afterwards because they tried to get back with the kids, twins, and they did not manage it for about 2 years. And it was horrible for the children, for the parents, for me as a lawyer afterwards, or the last half year I was a lawyer. And it was an experience, I say, well, even I didn't understand too much about surrogacy at that time, but I knew about the situation of the parents and the kids, twins born in India, living 2 years in India in not a very comfortable situation, and always in the fear being deported or being didn't get out of this country. And so I decided I want to help people not to come in such a situation. And so I looked at the surrogacy industry in the world and found out about what is ethically correct and what is problematic, and how you can solve legal problems before you start the procedures and when you can come back to Germany. And I think this is a really most important thing, that you know what you do when you start. Don't think about when it's too late. Think before you make any real facts. And this is my first advice in this.
Which I think is great advice, because we do, connect people to attorneys, of course, and we always, from Hatch point of view, always encourage people to the sooner rather than later to speak to somebody locally to make sure they understand the legal landscape. Because just like you say, Thomas, agreements can be, written differently, the right words inserted, the right kind of arrangements made. And so I think that's a great first advice. And I'm sure that's one of many great advice that you're going to give here today. Or maybe it was the last one, the only one. No, I'm sure you have a ton more. Great. Thank you so much, Thomas, for that introduction. So let's talk very briefly about Hatch and PFCLA for you who are watching this either live or during the recording. So basically, Hatch and Pacific Fertility Center were partners for about 20 years before we decided to merge together and became the same company. So today, what we're offering is basically we do everything from surrogacy and egg donation to everything IVF related, all under one roof for those intended parents or clients or patients that are looking for that kind of solution. We have plenty of clients and patients that work with just our agency or just our clinic, which is totally okay, of course. And then we have the clients that kind of want that all-inclusive one team experience. We call that the Peace of Mind program, which covers basically all of the services within one fixed fee. And the great thing with this, the most important things with this, is the medical oversight that we have with our in-house clinic. So being able to, for example, go through surrogate medical records with the IVF physician rather than an agency staff, being able to do things like a uterine lining check on our surrogates before we accept them rather than after the match. All of those crucial things that a clinic or agency can't really do without the clinic, we can do here with our own clinic. So everything non-medical to everything medical, legal, insurance, coordination. And legal includes connecting intended parents with great attorneys locally, like Thomas, for example, in Germany. So we do have local connections basically all over the world that where we've done surrogacy or egg donation that we connect our clients to. And then on the IVF side, of course, all of those gooey stuff like eggs and embryos, all of that is taken care of there with our 6 IVF physicians. So that's a little bit about who we are. Agency Hatch, the agency has been around for 33 years doing egg donation and surrogacy, and was actually the first egg donor agency in the United States, which always baffles my mind a little bit. I was 1 year of age when this agency was created, so that's always interesting to me to work here now. We have clients from over 52 countries, including Germany, of course. We have the largest donor database in the United States. We think that the egg donor choice is important. So we do also allow our clients to choose a donor in another database should they not be able to find somebody in the Hatch database. And we still do all the same programs for those clients. We have a great success rate, which basically looks at when you join this program, do you have a baby or not? That's what it looks at. The number of embryo transfers, the exact timeline can look differently from intended parent to intended parent, but most intended parents that join this program and stick with this program, they will have a child through this program. And then we completed 8,000 journeys, which is also mind-baffling. And like I said before, we have our physicians in-house. So that really leaves us with amazing surrogates, medically pre-screened and qualified. We do disqualify 95% of all of our applicants. So we are looking for, like you said, Thomas, both ethically, but also in all other aspects, great people to work with. And having that physician oversight really, really helps that process. On the clinical side, just a couple of short numbers, 13,500 births in total. We have an 82% first transfer pregnancy rate for transferring an embryo from from an embryo to a surrogate. And we've been around for 30 years and have clients from over 75 countries. I'm one of them. I worked with this clinic 2 times for my 2 kids. So I'm a little bit biased towards this clinic personally as well, but it's a really lovely space. And we just opened our new location last year in February. So it's a state-of-the-art clinic, basically. So that's a little bit about us and how we organize things and how we work. I feel like you covered this very well, Thomas. So if anybody that would love to learn more about Thomas, they can read here a little bit during the recording later on. All right, so let's talk a little bit about US surrogacy law state by state, more of an overview of this field. So this is a really good way to visualize how this looks in the United States. There is one little correction we will make before somebody points it out. That is that Michigan has actually legalized surrogacy quite recently. So for you who are not familiar with the US map, here we have Michigan, who up to recently had said no surrogacy, but quite recently said that we will allow surrogacy, and the state senator signed that bill. So today surrogacy is possible in the state of Michigan as well. That leaves 2 states that are not doing surrogacy, that either prohibited it or refuses to enforce surrogacy agreements. So Hatch, like many other agencies, stay away from those states when it comes to where our surrogate lives. So basically, we have 3 different scenarios. We have the surrogacy-friendly states, which are states that expressly permit surrogacy by statute or case law, or they have no exact law prohibiting surrogacy itself, so it can be done that way. And there is actually a legal process in existence for how that is done to establish parental rights for intended parents. I just want to quick note is that even in the surrogacy-friendly states, for you intended parents who are watching, there could be a difference in the process itself. So every state has a bit of a different process potentially. So it doesn't mean that it's all done the same way. It just means that there is a legal process to do that work, and that is a friendly state. So for example, a single male, for example, even a surrogacy-friendly state, some of these could still be less suitable for that scenario, or for example, married couples or unmarried couples, same-sex couples. There are variations to that, but all of these are considered to be surrogacy-friendly states. So what we do at Hatch, for example, we always do a legal analysis with our legal team in the US to make sure we're matching you in a state where it makes legal sense for you to be matched to avoid any issues. These states that are surrogacy friendly include California, as you can see, which I talked about is very popular in that sense, but also great states like Minnesota, where my first surrogate was from, Wisconsin, where my second surrogate was from. So consider all options if you can as an intended parent. It's going to minimize your matching time as well, because when you point out one state and say that state only, then of course the pool of surrogates is slimmer and could potentially take longer to match. The cautionary states include states like Arizona, for example. These states present potential legal obstacles in the process, and they might require additional legal processes depending on the circumstances. Sometimes surrogacy is practiced within these states, but results can be very unpredictable, which is why we would caution anybody to go to those states, and we try to stay away from them as well. And then we talked about those restricted prohibited states, which is very nice that Michigan now has changed that. So we have more surrogates to work with, which is great for us, our intended parents, and for the US overall. So this is a great map. Feel free to share this with friends or others who are interested. It's a really great visualization. This is what I talked a little bit about, considering what state to match in could depend on a lot of different things. For example, like marital status, married, unmarried, single, if you're a same-sex relationship or opposite-sex relationship. Also, if you're single, if you're male and female, sometimes matters a bit in some states, but also genetic connection. Are you using a sperm donor, or are you using an egg donor? Are you using both a sperm donor and an egg donor? Or are you having embryos donated to you? All of these things can also impact and have an importance for where you match with your surrogate. California is a great state for surrogacy. Like I said, I sometimes would say to intended parents, let's not focus so much on California. There are other great states, but it has led this nation in assisted reproductive law, especially for egg donation and surrogacy, and was also the first state to list the two fathers on the birth certificate. So there is a lot of good reasons to go to California as well. And you can work in California in different ways. You know, you live there yourself as the intended parent, the surrogate lives there, or if the surrogate gives birth there, of course, and the transfer happens there, or even just if the contracts sometimes are signed there, you can still work in California. So this is something you can discuss with an attorney about how California law impacts other states potentially when it comes to having the embryo transfer done there. But like I said, there's many great states for surrogacy. So try to not limit only to California. California surrogates are in high demand. That's why I keep saying that. Compensations are higher, timelines are longer. So just kind of keep an open mind does help in this process. All right, that was briefly and shortly about the US side of things. So now we're going to get to what you actually came here for and why you're watching this live or at this recording, which is to hear Thomas speak about the legal considerations for German intended parents. So I'm going to leave this over to you, Thomas, and you let me know when to go through these slides. It's always a little bit awkward when you're not in control, but just let me know when you want to go through the next slide. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Edwin, again. Yeah, you've heard about the legal situation in US a little bit now. The first important thing to understand is the US courts will issue a court order saying the intended parents are the legal parents. And that is something that is really helpful for the German perspective and the German legal system. And there are just, in my experience, two countries in the world who have these court orders. There's US and Canada. And these court orders expressly say that the intended parents are the legal parents. And there's no reason to have some doubts that this is a real decision about the parentage. It is a legal thing. And it is clear that you are, according to this court order, the legal parents when you get it. And when you get such a court order, then you can recognize this court order in Germany. And this is the thing you have to do because the reason, the fact that you have a birth certificate mentioning both names on it as the parents doesn't mean in a legal way anything. It is not a reason to be accepted as legal parents just because you are mentioning in a birth certificate. A birth certificate just say that at a certain place, at a certain time, a child was born. All other things in a birth certificate can be wrong and can be corrected. So you have to get you will get a US birth certificate with your names on it, but this and the birth certificate itself doesn't mean you are the legal parents. And in contradictory to what's in this birth certificate is the German law that says the woman who gave birth to a child is the legal mother of this child. And when she's married, the husband is the legal father, or maybe the one who accepted it is the legal father, or when a court decides. So none of this is relevant in your position because probably none of you is married with a surrogate. And you don't want to have the surrogate as a legal mother in your life. So what you have to do is to solve the conflict between what is right according to the US law and what is right according to the German law. And this solution of this conflict is that you get a German court order saying you are the legal parents of this child. This is something that is not really complicated when you know how it works. But it's really important because when you don't do it, you may have a problem in the future you will never think about, and hopefully nothing happens in this way, but life is strange sometimes. And of course, when you are happy, times can change and you're not happy with the other one. And then maybe you fight, and then one of you has more rights according to the child than the other when you don't have such a court order accepted in Germany from the beginning. Because the one who is the genetical part of the child can, usually it's the man, we can make a so-called acknowledgement of paternity, or a declaration that he is the legal father. And the other one, or the other woman, has no rights to do so, especially because women don't have any chance to make acknowledgement of motherhood. That's not possible in Germany. So when the times are changing and it's not a happy way at the moment, then you can really get big problems, especially one of you, when you don't make this recognition of this US court order. And when you do it immediately, so when you do it after it is issued in the United States, or when you come to Germany again, then you have to realize that this is not a big burden. You have to it's not a big thing to do. It's just a problem when you don't do it. When you do it, the situation is quite simple. I told you about my first experience with surrogacy in India, and that was a time in 2009 when nothing was possible in Germany. Every court, we ask for recognition of these children as legal children of the intended parents, say, no, 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 it's forbidden according to the German regulation, and we don't do anything like that. And that was about 5 years until 2013 or 14, when the Federal Civil Court says, well, you have to look at the best interest of the children. And of course, it's in the best interest of the child to have two parents, two legal parents who are responsible for the kid. And when you have a look at this, then you can't say, well, the German regulation didn't allow this, so we don't accept it. No, that is not in the best interest of the child, because we say the mother, the legal mother, is the woman who gave birth. So children go back to US, and the US authorities say, well, they are not US citizens because our courts say they are the children of the intended parents, so go back to Germany again. So the children are in the plane and coming from Germany to US and from US to Germany all the time. That is obviously not in the best interest of the children. So what our highest civil court says is, always when it's clear that a surrogate is acting voluntarily and at least one of the intended parents are genetically linked to the child, then this court order has to be accepted in Germany, has to be recognized in Germany. And that's the way you can do it. You go to a family court, you ask for recognition of the US court order, and the US court says yes. The German family court says yes, the US court order is valid in Germany as well as in US. That means you are, according to the German legislation, the legal parents of the child. And at that point, it doesn't matter if this surrogate is married or not. And probably it doesn't matter if it's really a genetical link to the child. But at the moment, the German Federal Court says we are not sure if we will have some doubts to accept or to recognize a US court order when none of the intended parents are genetically linked to the child. In this case, it makes much sense to get some safeguards before you start the procedure. Makes things a little bit more complicated, but I'm quite optimistic that even then you can do it. But you have to think more about the real procedure afterwards. At least when one of you is genetically linked to the child, every court order from the United States or Canada will be accepted in Germany. And that is really an important step for you to go, because when this court in Germany says you are the legal parents of the children or the child, then nobody has any right to have doubts about this for the rest of your life. And that means then you can go to the German so-called Standesamt, and you can apply for a birth certificate, and you can get a German passport for the child. You don't need it to come. That's the next slide.
Yeah.
You don't need a German passport to come here to Germany. That is absolutely sufficient to have the US birth certificate and the US passport, because as a US citizen, you can come here to Germany without visa. And so you don't have to go to the nearest, so-called nearest consulate in US. It's always quite a journey. And when you have a newborn, it makes no sense to make trips that are not necessary. And so you don't have to go to the responsible German consulate. You can just pick up the US passport and come to Germany. And there are no problems even when you enter Germany, both of you with German passports and the child with a US passport. You can show the birth certificate, and that is usually sufficient. And in case anyone has doubts, then you can show the US court order and say, look, the court says we are the parents, so let us come in, and that will work. There's not a real problem for this. Okay, the procedure in Germany takes about sometimes 1 month. That is in Munich, for example, case, though they are really, really fast. And sometimes it takes about half a year, maybe a little bit more, because not every court in Germany knows how to act when you get when it gets an application for recognition of the US court order. It's not written in any law books or anything like that. So everyone has to think about again, maybe new, when it's not a common thing. So when you make this procedure in Berlin, the courts know about it. When you're in Frankfurt or in Cologne, they know about this. But when you do it in a small city, probably you are the first one who applied for this. And so it takes quite a time. But the end is clear. The result is clear. You will be accepted as a legal parent according to the German law too. And that is clear. Then the child has to get a German birth certificate and a German passport. And that's the end of the journey according to the German legal system. And you are free to live together as everyone other who is a parent. And nobody can ever say you are not legal parents to this child. So there is indeed a quite fast and simple way in a legal perspective to get to avoid any problems in the future for you and your family. And it's not relevant who is the genetical part of the child. Both legal parents are in the same way entitled to be accepted as parents. Everyone has the same rights. It's not relevant who is genetically linked or not. And then, you are absolutely be free to live your life as a family without any problems, I hope.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's it's always tough to being a family with kids, but still, hopefully, no real issues more than taking care of your child and not sleeping a lot. Wonderful. I have a question for you, Thomas. Just thinking about you talking about filing for the court, and these courts that have more experience with this and some that have less experience with this in smaller cities. So, are the German intended parents obligated to file with a specific place and court in Germany, maybe where they live, or can they basically file with any court? How does that work?
No, it's indeed case you have to file this application in the family court that is responsible for your place where you live.
Okay, got it.
When you don't live in Germany, it's the court is responsible where you have ever lived in Germany, and when you have never lived in Germany, then you have to go to the family court in Berlin, Schöneberg. So, but there is one family court is responsible for your procedure.
Got it. Okay. I was just thinking if everybody will run to Munich now when they heard about you saying 1 month in Munich, now everybody will want to go there.
Yeah, but you have to register there, and it's quite expensive to live there. So
okay, got it. Okay, so maybe no Munich.
Well, actually, it's not a problem when it takes 6 months or 10 months
Yeah.
because you are together with the kids. Nobody will try to get the kid from its home, and so it takes longer, but you are not really you don't have to be concerned about anything
in any risk or danger in that sense.
yeah.
Yeah, got it. Great. Well, thank you so much for walking us through that. I saw that we had somebody raise their hand earlier. So if you want to put in your question now, please do so. We can't really accommodate any voice messaging, etc., or speaking here. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. We can always chat with me or Thomas as well regarding these topics. So if you want to speak to Thomas about this, you have his email there to potentially email him about setting up a call. I'm assuming, Thomas, that you do consultations surrounding this topic with intended parents. You can also schedule a call with Hatch if you want to. That's easily done to just go to our website or fill out the form. You can also email me directly at edwin@hatch.us. Or be very modern. This is not my field of expertise. Scan the QR code to go directly to the calendar, and you can do that there. So let's see if there are any questions for Thomas. Then I'm assuming mainly would be for you, Thomas. So let me see here if I can pull that up while at the same time as I'm doing everything else. Okay, let's see. Is there anybody that has a question? I know that one person was raising their hand, so please put your question in. All right, Thomas, are you ready? Because now the questions are coming. All right, Thomas, do you have to hire a lawyer to file for the court order in Germany? And how much does that usually cost?
Yeah, indeed, you don't have to hire a lawyer. You can do everything for yourself. The question is, make it sense. I have some clients who really have done this. And afterwards, they become my client because it was not so easy as they thought. The problem is you have to act with someone who has no experience in this field. And it's not a question how to do it in a legal way, but it's a question how you can convince someone who has no idea how surrogacy in US or wherever works to convince that this is not something very delicate, something he has to, avoid to say yes to this. And that makes things a little bit complicated. And when you're not a lawyer, probably, it's quite, maybe it's impossible to write an application so the court will understand immediately what it's necessary, what he has to think about, and how he has to decide. But of course, you can try to when you are a risky person, when you have fun with risks. So it's a good idea. You can't make too much wrong. Maybe the court will make some questions, and then you realize, oh, you have forgotten to tell this, and you have to forgotten to tell this, and so that can happen. But you can always hire a lawyer at that point, so it is not really necessary. But on the other hand, at that time, you should file such an application. You have quite a lot of things to do because you have a newborn with you, and it makes sort of work. Probably that's not the best idea to start with any legal try to find some legal experience in this, but you can do anyway. When you ask the costs, that depends on what the court will require. First of all, the court will have to get some money, that about 400 or 500 euro maximum. But the court will ask for a translation of a lot of documents. Especially, the court wants to know how he can be sure that the surrogate was acting voluntarily. So you can present the contract, but the contract is about 30 or 40 pages. And when you have to translate everything, it's really expensive. So I always say it's not necessary to translate everything. I just translate some parts of it where the court can see that the surrogate was really acting voluntarily. She knows what she did and she wants to do so. And that is enough to have some parts of this contract translated, but nevertheless, it's cost about maximum 1.5 to translate everything correctly. And then my fees at the moment are about 3.2 plus taxes, so about 3.8 for the whole procedure. And it can be that the court requires the surrogate to be involved in this procedure. And this, you can, of course, let the court do it. So the court will translate the application, send it to the surrogate via our Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they send it to the US Foreign Office, and then they send it to the surrogate. It takes quite a time and is quite expensive because of all the translations. Or you can ask the surrogate to hire a German lawyer for about 600 euro. Of course, you have to pay for this. So that makes things a little bit more expensive. And what happens, this happens, for example, in Berlin all the time. The Berlin courts, nearly all of them say, we want to be the surrogate part of the court procedure in Germany. So you have to think about hiring a lawyer for the surrogate. And what happens too is that the court wants to know if indeed one of you is genetically linked to the child. So they ask for a DNA test that costs about 400 euro. So it's not too expensive, but nevertheless, it's a bit money. You have to pay for this. And altogether, it's about 6,575 maximum for the whole procedure.
So
and even if you do it for yourself, it's about at least 3,000 you have to calculate.
Yeah. All right. So is it possible to know what is the range price of the surrogacy pregnancy? So when we look, I'm assuming you mean for the hatch packaging, etc. So if you go to our website, you can see that on the website there. Basically, it ranges from 160 for surrogacy only up towards 230 for hatch, egg donation, surrogacy, and IVF, because we are our own clinic. So the range is quite large depending on what services you need. So please take a look at the website. Not all of our packages are posted there, but there are a couple of them, depending on if you're using your own eggs or if you need an egg donor, etc. So please have a look. And if you have further questions, feel free to email me or set up a call and I'll walk you through that in detail. What is the possibility for same-sex partners who only live in Germany and not in the US? I heard surrogacy is forbidden in Germany. Okay, so they basically same-sex partners who live in Germany. So the question is, can German same-sex partners pursue surrogacy in the US, even if it's prohibited in Germany? What do you say, Thomas?
Yeah, well, everyone can use the possibilities in the United States. The German law say it's forbidden to do it in Germany. It's forbidden for everyone be involved in this procedure when living in Germany. So that means I can't be part of this, a doctor can't be part of this, and so on. But the intended parents and the surrogate are not liable in Germany. So they can do it without being afraid of doing something illegal or doing an offense or a crime. So that is, of course, possible. The first part of the question is a little bit delicate because you can do it when you are not Germans. Of course, when you live just in Germany, you can do the journey in US anyway. But when you come back, you probably don't have a chance to get a court order when none of you is a German. Because just living here doesn't mean you are entitled to have a birth certificate, a German birth certificate, when the child is not born in Germany. So the reason why we can get a German court order and know which family court is responsible for the procedure is that the child has to get a German birth certificate. And a German birth certificate will be just issued for German kids and not for any other kids or kids born in Germany. But when you are not a German and the child is not born in Germany, you are not entitled to have a German birth certificate. And so you're not entitled to ask a family court to get a US court order recognized in Germany. So what is not, well, it's not the worse situation, because the only problem then you have to face is that you have to deal with every authority who has doubts that you are the legal parents, that you are indeed the legal parent. So you may face the problem that you have to start the procedure being accepted as legal parents at several stages, and so make the procedure according to several authorities in more than one part, in more than one procedure. That is, yeah, well, it's not the best, but it's not a real problem.
Yeah.
Because usually when you have one decision, let's say the so-called Familienkasse, the office who has to pay Kindergeld, and they say, no, you're not the parent, and you sue them, and a court decides, yes, you are the legal parents, then you can use this court order when another authority denies that you are the legal parents. But it's more than one legal process, so it's maybe a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, it sounds like something that's not really anything somebody wants to deal with unless you really, really have to. But I appreciate that answer, knowing that that possibility also exists. But I think also the importance, like you said, is that surrogacy might be prohibited in a country. It doesn't mean that it's prohibited to pursue in another country per se. And we work with German intended parents all the time, so definitely agree with that, Thomas. Can we have a surrogate friend? Let's do one or two more, Thomas, and then I'm going to let you go for today, okay? Can we have a surrogate friend have the IVF procedure in the US and then return Germany with us, GC, and with my partner? What will happen if the surrogate gives birth in Germany? That's a very specific question. Is that too specific, Thomas, that you would prefer to answer that in a private session, or how do you feel about that? Let me do the first part, that bringing anybody to the US for an IVF procedure is definitely up to the patient if they want to have a medical procedure in the US or not. So that part I don't see any complications with. But what do you say about this other part, Thomas, about having that person after pregnancy is confirmed, I guess, or during that time fly back to Germany and then give birth in Germany? What would happen at that time?
When you have a US court order, that's absolutely enough. That's absolutely sufficient and it's not relevant where the child is born then.
But I think in this case, Thomas, they're not actually born in the US, so they wouldn't have a US court order. The surrogate would give birth in Germany.
Yeah, when you have a pre-birth order, then of course it's possible that there's a court order, and then when you have the court order going back to Germany and give birth there, that is possible. I have never had such a situation, but well, the most important thing for us in Germany is that you have a US court order. When you get this, it's not relevant where the child is born. So in my opinion, it makes not much of a problem in this situation. The only question will be when the woman gave birth here and she lives here and say, well, I am the legal mother, but there's a court order saying I'm not the legal mother, but I want to be the legal mother, then I think there's a really big problem to see what the court will decide when I go with this procedure as intended parents to the court. Because it's even in the US, it's a legal problem when the surrogate saying, I want to be the legal mother. In fact, that did not happen at all. So according to my experience, there are about 30,000 cases with surrogacy, and in just 5 of them, there was a problem in a legal way that the surrogate was not willing to accept that the child she carries is the child of the intended parents. All the other surrogates say, okay, I gave birth for someone that is not me. I'm not the legal mother. I'm not the mother at all of this child. And it's not such a conflict for the surrogate as you may think. But when she wants to do this, of course, there's a theoretical interesting legal question: who has more rights on this child?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I think that this last question is very interesting, like you say, Thomas, and I sense that you're kind of working it out also, you know, from what would actually happen in Germany and the US. So I think maybe this is a great question. If this is a situation for you who asked, is that actually relevant in that sense? I mean, maybe connect with Thomas and talk about this directly, so you can get Thomas's thought on this a little bit more elaborated than he has time for in this short webinar. I want to thank everybody that came, and I especially want to thank you, Thomas, for taking the time for being here with us today. I'm sure that the people that have been here today and that will watch this recording are very, very grateful for your expertise. And now they can also reach out to you if they need any help or assistance with their process. And you who have watched this or listened to this, thank you so much. I hope it's been useful. I know we are all in different steps in this journey. Some of us know more, some of us know less. And I think this is a great way to learn a little bit more. Hopefully everybody learned something from this today. So thank you, all of you. And thank you once again, Thomas, for this, and hope to see you all in the future again. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Edwin, from my side too. And thanks everyone to join us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much all, and take care out there. Bye-bye.
Bye.